Welcome to the Non-Essential Podcast. I'm Steve Gibson.
I'm Ben Matlock.
And this is the second part of a two-parter, so if you didn't hear the first part, you should probably go back and listen to it. Or don't, and then just...
Jump in halfway, because really the first half was all kind of set up, I assume.
Yeah, I mean, it was good. I enjoyed it. I thought it was a good story so far, but yeah, it did feel like a kind of spot where if you don't catch it and you just pick up today, I think you'll still get the gist of
I thought it was a pretty good story until you decided you were going to, like, torment me with every fucking spider tweet you could, like, muster in the last week. That fucking... Like, we were joking about it. It's all ha-ha and shit. But that fucking clip from Enemy... And if you haven't seen Enemy, don't see Enemy... Because it has some of the worst fucking images of spiders ever. And you, like, posted, like, a screen clip from it. From the worst shot in, like, maybe the history of film. And I genuinely couldn't sleep last night thinking about it. It fucking sucks.
It's just payback because ever since talking about spider, if you haven't picked it up and you missed last week's episode, it's a creepypasta, but it's about spiders, playing off of one of Ben's biggest fears. And to be frank, I'm not a big fan of him. My fear of spiders.
You're liking them less and less as the week has gone on.
Yeah, that's the thing, is it's payback because ever since you brought this story up, like the very first day I woke up, and it wasn't like I woke up and it was right there. I woke up and I like went to the bathroom. When I came back out, there was a spider on the wall, like 6 inches above where my pillow was. And it's like, oh, hi, motherfucker. Like, you must have been there the whole time. How long were you watching me sleep or what?
Yeah.
So I took care of that, and then I've tweeted about most of these, so I think you're familiar with them. This one I don't think I tweeted about. There's the prior owners of this house. We just bought it back in at the beginning of the year, and there's like a lot of times when they moved out, they left a lot of stuff behind. But one of the things was this. It was like it's an outdoor. It's like a lantern, I guess, is the best way to describe it. It's got like a glass globe, but it's almost like stained glass, and it's got like a metal body, and you can put a candle or something in it, whatever.
Yeah.
But it's kind of neat. It needs some. It's a little rusty because it's been outside for a while, but the glass, of course, doesn't rust. And I was like, oh, I could probably spray paint this and make this nice again. So anyway,
I could give
it's
it
been
to the spiders.
Spiders, yeah. Well, it's been sitting outside since we moved in, and then the other night, I went out. Like, it's been in like our back garden, and I don't know that Tara had even seen it. So it's like, oh, I'm going to get it and like show it to her, so she could see like why I bought the spray paint, and like she'll probably think it's neat. But I didn't bring it inside because I'm smart. So then, like 2 or 3 days ago, it was sitting out on my deck, and I'm like, I'm going to take it apart so I can take the glass out and clean it, and then get ready to sand and paint the metal part. And I take the globe off, and like 4 different kinds of spiders go scrambling out of it. And it's like, yeah, that's why I didn't take it inside.
Yeah. Well, I hate when they're like coexisting.
That's what
they
scares
should be
you
racist
because,
like humans are.
They should be in there fighting to the death, but the fact that they weren't, that tells me that they were teaming up to they're like, okay, when he brings us inside, that's when we strike.
Yeah. By striking, and then we have like 1 million babies in his house, so he's outnumbered.
The other night, I came downstairs and I've been trying to like practice guitar about every day just to get better at it, but I have to wait until Lincoln goes to bed generally. So like she went to bed and I came downstairs and I flipped on the light. It's right here where I'm sitting now. My computer desk is where my guitars are, and I turned the light on. It's pretty dark in the basement, and I sit down and get the guitar out, and I turn back around and I notice there's this like silver dollar sized spider like an inch away from the light switch, so meaning my hand almost brushed it.
Yeah.
And so I've had a whole lot of run-ins with spiders this week, and I have no other explanation than they heard us telling the story and they're like, crap, they're on to us, we better
one of these guys
attack.
Doesn't quite understand the threat we pose, we better meanwhile I'll like be that like you remember that dude in the bunker in that game, Edith Finch? Like,
yeah.
Like, I'll be that guy before, like, the year is up. At the rate these stories are going.
The problem is the bunkers are kind of like the dark, dank places that spiders love. Like, that's probably the worst place to go.
It's how you seal it, okay?
But those things are like, they're magic. They can get into fucking anywhere. What you do is you got to move into like a walk-in freezer. Like you work at a grocery store. I'm sure there's one there you could use, like the dairy refrigerator. They don't like cold. So that's where you're there you go.
But that's the problem. I don't like fucking cold either. They should have to deal with the cold. You should surround a normal heated bunker with like a moat, like a barrier of like a walk-in freezer, so it's just like a completely cold ring around your bunker.
That's what you do. Build a room inside a walk-in freezer, so the room itself could be. Yeah. That's smart.
That is smart. Why hasn't anyone thought of that? It's the dumbest idea
I don't know
I've
about
ever
you,
had,
but I've had a lot of run-ins with spiders. But I felt a need to share them all, because if I'm going to be uncomfortable,
that was just funny. It was it was really that screen cat, like that, because I wasn't ignorant to it. I had seen that shot. I haven't seen the movie, but I said it last week. If you're an arachnophobe, you are. Oh man, you are almost an expert on anything spider related, because you spend a lot of time watching it and like deliberately making yourself fucking scared and nervous.
Yeah, and at least from that screen capture, it's like the perfect shot, because at first I didn't hardly really notice because it's basically a guy with standing in a doorway, and the room behind it is dark, like it's shadow, and then you realize that there's like a spider the size of the fucking room, like the whole
it's a tarantula, and the movie is actually really interesting from what I've heard about it. I can't watch it because like that's enough for me. But like you sent it to me and it sucked because it was on my phone. And I saw it, and I knew what you were doing, because it's you. So you always tweet things like, you only tweet things at me to, like, hurt me. So,
right.
So I saw the picture, and I recognized what it was from. But on my phone, it was, like, so dark and, like, blurry that you couldn't actually make it out. So it just looked like the dude standing in the doorway.
Yeah.
But I knew, and I knew when I got home and I opened up my desktop, it was going to be there. And that sucks. So I had to work like half my shift knowing I had to go home and see that fucking image that I never wanted to see again.
Well, and if your Twitter's like mine, I don't get enough mentions. Like when somebody... Yeah. Like occasionally somebody will tweet a GIF at you that's just obnoxious, like it's flashing or something. It's usually there for me for about 2 or 3 days sometimes, because until
for the love of God, if you hear this, please follow me and just reply. You're a dumb cunt to like anything I type.
Anything to push it off the
so the shit Steve posts at me can go away. Like, I'll take all the abuse from everything else, but just like I just don't want to see that photo.
What you need to do is tell people, like, I am terrified of boobs. Just please don't tweet boobs at me.
Please
that would be horrible.
No, nobody would bite on that. Let's be real.
Yeah, that's true.
Everybody loves boobs, even if you're not attracted to them. They're fun. You can do neat things with them. Anyway, so last week we started this story. It's called The Forest of 1,000 Legs. If you did miss last week's episode, or you want, to kind of refresh your memory without having to go back and listen to it, it's about this kid who a childhood friend lived by this fucking spider forest. It was just a horrible, horrible place full of spiders, but this dumb family thought, like, we could get a lot of research done. But
if I remember correctly, literally every species of spiders on the planet was supposed to reside in this forest.
Which how would you know, considering nobody's ever actually gone through the forest?
Well, and it's also curious because the spiders span a whole wide range of needs as far as climate.
Yeah. But this forest is perfect.
Yeah.
And so this our hero goes back to the house after many years. He's graduated, and he kind of he's feeling nostalgic about his dead friend. And he gets there, and the dad, who has prosthetic legs, had his legs amputated from trying to run into the forest to save his daughter, is now planning to go back into the forest. Which he just coincidentally decides to do the moment this kid shows up on his doorstep.
Yeah. Well, I could see that from a mental health standpoint. Sometimes it's that, like, you just need somebody to know what you're doing. Like, as the situation presented itself.
All right. So, yeah, when we ended the story, we were about halfway through. So, let's do this shit. And I'll kind of pick us back where we left off. So, movement out the window caught my eye. I looked over and saw Robert Jr. standing under the carport, facing the forest. He was downing another beer, a backpack hanging from his shoulder. He was dressed in different clothes from the flannel shirt and cutoffs he had been wearing when he let me inside. He was wearing a heavy jacket and a hat, with a different set of prosthetics that had shoes. He looked like he was dressed for going into the forest. I left Lucy's room, crossed to the other end of the house, and threw the screen door off the kitchen. Robert Jr. didn't respond to the wooden rattle of the door banging shut. Thank you, Kat. We're just starting. Shut up. God,
it's just sounded like sound effects for the screen door. I just heard...
You're going in. It wasn't a question. I was incredulous. Ain't been in there since I lost Lucy, Robert Jr. said pensively. Think it's about time I go back in one last time before I torch it. Which we talked about last time is the only thing that made sense in any of this. Like, the only thing that doesn't make sense about that sentence is why you would wait this many years to set this place on fire. Yeah.
Although you could say maybe he had some weird hope that his daughter was still alive. You don't want to torch the woods if you think your daughter's in there. But,
I do. Yeah. Like, no, I'm saying, like, you wouldn't want your kid, like, oh, she might still be alive. What do you call alive? If you're in the middle of that forest, it's like, I will absolutely end that shit.
Well, like we talked about, and this will only hit with our video game fans, but like Quelaag, basically, she's half spider.
And she had to go. That's the reality. The sun was hidden behind Lockhart Wood, but not quite set, casting the house and us in shadows, and before I could stop myself, I asked, "Can I go with you?" To this day, I'm not sure why I wanted to go with him. Like, no fucking shit. Like, this is the most random, like, impulse, yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, I was about to say he obviously struck out with every single girl at the school except Lucy, so this is his life. But then I remembered they threw in that line about he's gay, so it's not that. It's...
Yeah, there was a, random sort of just, like, a very aggressive Robert Jr. asking our hero if he was gay for pretty much no reason. Because that's how we break down boundaries, is by not respecting them at all when somebody enters your house. Maybe for a sense of adventure, of danger that 18-year-olds are attracted to and think they can survive anything. Maybe I had some stupid notion that we'd find Lucy in there, dead or alive. Maybe I just didn't want a guy who had lost his daughter the last time he was in those woods to go in for the first time since then alone. It's dangerous in there, Robert Jr. said. It wasn't a no. I'd be with you, I said, dumb and optimistic, but in my defense, he let me go with him. Neither of us mentioned it, but I know he didn't want to go into the woods alone either. You'll need to be dressed right, was all he said, and the next thing I knew, he was jamming a hat on my head, layering me in protected clothing a size too big, and cramming my hands and feet into gloves and boots a size too small.
That's weird. Who was the suit designed for in the first place, then?
For him, I guess.
A bigger guy with smaller hands and feet.
He's a really tall guy, but the hands are like the size of 10-year-olds.
Yeah.
Not a perfect fit, but close enough, he said, tucking my baggy pant legs into my boots. I had zipped the jacket most of the way, but he yanked the zipper all the way up to my chin. It was my gear back when I was a little older than you, when my daddy bought the place. He strapped a headlamp to my hat, did the same for himself, and shrugged on a backpack that he had filled with a first aid kit and a cold pack for anti-venom. I watched him put it all together, fascinated, as I nursed another beer. I like that he keeps drinking too.
Yeah. Especially after I think he kind of mentioned that he never drank before. Because he's, if you,
that's
like I
thing.
missed the first half, he's like 18 or 19, so he's, yeah.
This is a don't drink underage story, because if you drink, you might be tempted to go into a spider woods.
Right.
It was hard to believe he hadn't ventured into the forest in more than 10 years. The speed and certainty with which he prepared everything was like that of someone who explored Lockhart Wood daily. He gave me a set of strict, reasonable rules, basically telling me not to leave his side and not to thrash around if I walked into a web, and to always watch my step even though I was wearing boots. I could change my mind at any time in the forest, so if I wanted to leave, he would guide me out. I sent a quick lie of a text to my mom telling her that Robert Jr. had invited me to stay for dinner, and then zipped my phone into a breast pocket. By now, twilight was fading. The purple sky seemed to turn an inky blue, and we set off. Why do you have to do this at night?
I don't know. Like, it's not like one of the, like your cheesy movies where it's like, oh, maybe it was. I can't remember for sure. I know they had graduated and he was going to be going away to college, but I don't think it's like tomorrow morning or anything. Yeah. Like, you could be like, yeah, I'll come back, at daylight and we'll go in then.
Yeah. I mean, they did talk about in the first half that these woods are like so dense that daylight doesn't particularly matter when you're in them, but
it does though. Like, just in my head, if it's daylight,
in my head, and spiders are more active at night. So
right,
it's like those ones like in the rainforest or whatever. You can hear them fucking running along the ground in the woods, which sounds like some arachnophobe would make up, but it's true. It's fucking scary. The trail leading into the forest was rough and overgrown from years of seeing no foot traffic, but not completely hidden. The first thing I did when I entered the forest was walk right into a web that Robert Jr. had subtly avoided. I started to flail instinctively, but Robert Jr. caught me with an arm across my chest, saying, "Don't thrash," I said. After he assured me the web didn't belong to anything venomous, I carefully picked the web from my face and hair, following him deeper into the wood.
Hair? I thought you had a fucking hat on.
Well, I mean, hair comes out of a hat.
Yeah, I'm picturing, like, I want a fucking beekeeper's, like...
I want to be in a hazmat fucking thing,
yeah.
I want to be in, like, that juggernaut armor from, like, Call of Duty or whatever with a fucking flamethrower.
Well,
that's the only way I would even get within a football field of those woods.
That's what I was going to say. If you're planning on torching the woods anyway afterwards, like, bring a flamethrower with you and just kind of, like, get stuff as you go.
Just give yourself a little bit of a path,
Right.
Just nip away at the woods. Check things out, and then when you're done, bomb it. It was darker than I anticipated up beneath the trees. There were a few spots of visible death in the trees, suffocated and deprived of sunlight under thick layers of web wrapped around them, but most of the forest looked healthy, supporting the spider population symbiotically. Robert Jr. and I switched on our headlamps pretty quickly when the scant moonlight didn't light our way sufficiently. I looked down at the
Since when has scant moonlight ever lit anybody's way anywhere sufficiently? Like,
samurai fights.
Oh, that's true.
That's the best lighting. I can see.
I stand corrected. Yeah.
I looked down at the ground, casting a wide circle of light at my feet, and immediately froze in place. My skin crawling horribly. Spiders the size of $50 were... Hey, there you go. Size of $50 were scurrying away from my boots in droves. Not quite a swarm, but enough to be uncountable.
What's the line between a drove and a swarm? Like,
a swarm.
Because a drove?
Frankly, I think a swarm is something that attacks you.
Yeah,
droves are something that run away from you, or they run towards something else. He's using these words for quantity, and frankly, it all just means way too many goddamn spiders.
Right.
You're all right, son. Those ones ain't gonna hurt you. Robert Jr. hadn't looked back at me, but he must have heard me freeze behind him. You want me to take you back? Pride swelled higher than the fear in my chest, so I said, "No, I'm fine." One of the spiders crawled slowly over my boot, its long legs probing curiously at my laces. I wrenched my eyes away from the ground, shook the spider off violently, and pushed forward. I've never been particularly arachnophobic. No fucking shit. Because if you were, you wouldn't have gone back to that house.
Even if you were just slightly arachnophobic, like, you'd have been like, nope.
Yeah, I don't think you have to be arachnophobic to realize this is a fucking terrible place and this is a bad idea.
You send a postcard, like, I just wanted to send a postcard to let you know I was thinking about your dead daughter. Please don't write me back, a spider might get inside.
Yeah.
Like...
Fuck, dude. Like, I remember the last time I went to Texas... I didn't do due diligence on what kind of spiders they have down south. And they have some motherfuckers. And my dad was like, you know, I didn't tell you about this because I was worried you wouldn't come if I did. And I was like, you're absolutely right. And I haven't been back there in like 10 years. You know?
Yeah. They own the state. Get out.
Yeah.
Evacuate north.
I did run into one of them in a bathtub, too. They're fucking, like, they got, like, massive recluses. Shut up, cat. We're talking about things you're supposed to eat. I've never been particularly arachnophobic, but it was impossible not to feel itchy all over, imagining hundreds upon hundreds of unseen spiders creeping into my protective clothing, slipping down the collar of my shirt and edging along my scalp into my hair. The tiny spiders became less of a presence, however, when we came to a fork in the trail and Robert Jr. dropped to a sudden crouch, grabbing my sleeve and yanking me down with him. "Look at this," he whispered, his headlamp fixed on a spider not 2 feet away from us. "This here's a nasty one." A spider the size of my hand stood strangely before us with 2 sets of thick, hairy legs thrown in the air. It might have looked silly if not for the vivid, violently red jaws on display pulsing angrily in our direction. Worse still, the spider continued to move, swaying gently with its rosy... I can't even pronounce this word. Chelicera? Or chelicere? This is way too much fucking spider knowledge for me.
Yeah, I don't know what
it's a bad thing. Some rosy is throbbing, almost obscenely, inching infinitesimally closer with its side-to-side motions. Wide-eyed, I whispered back, "What is it?" Infuriated at the sound of my voice, the spider lunged closer. This time I could see its fangs protruding from the red, quivering with rage and glinting with wetness. "Brazilian wandering spider," said Robert Jr. softly. "P. ferra, it looks like, but it can be hard to say without a closer look. Only live in South America, except for this place, you know." He unzipped 2 pockets and withdrew a larger pair of gloves to slip over the ones he was already wearing. They might
just wear those all the time.
Yeah, what the fuck? You have more protection? And you were hiding it?
Yeah, like, so far, their protective clothing sounds like something you just get from, like, Tommy Bahama or something, Banana Republic. It's like,
yeah,
I've got a khaki...
No, go for it.
Yeah. It's a khaki shirt and pants. He's talking about, like, afraid they'll get in his collar. You go, hell yeah, that's what I'd be afraid of that too. It needs to be like a dry suit that you go scuba diving in. That shit needs to be zipped up tight.
Like, they're preparing for a fucking spider hell forest the way I have to suit up to kill a spider in my bedroom. You know, I put on 2 sweaters just in case, and gloves, winter gloves, so they're thick. He unzipped 2 pockets and withdrew a larger pair of gloves to slip over the ones he was already wearing. They might be the deadliest in the world. Instinctively, I shrank back, but then took hold of Robert Jr.'s jacket sleeve with popping eyes when I saw him reach towards the spider. "Don't!" The spider struck at his fingers with lightning speed, and a force that made a sharp snapping sound pierced the dark woods around us. In the blink of an eye, it struck twice, a red-brown blur. Horrified, I tugged frantically at Robert's sleeve. "Relax," he said, pulling his hand back and showing me his intact glove. "Hoss can't quite bite through these." The spider darted out of our joined headlight lamp beams and off the trail into the woods. Robert Jr. removed his bulky second pair of gloves and stowed them away. Can't do much delicate handling with gloves like that, but anything else and those fangs will go right through. You
what the fuck do you need to delicately handle in a spider death forest? Like
those spiders.
There's no delicate went out the window. Just
yeah.
go.
Like the thing is, like I don't know what exactly he's trying to find. Like the body. If it's just the body, you can wear any protection you want. He stood suddenly, leaving me crouched and trembling, clenching and unclenching my fists, unpleasantly aware of how thin my gloves were now. I stood slowly. My headlamp slid up the trees in front of me, where the bark seemed to shiver and shift with the traffic of smaller spiders oozing up and down the trunks. I turned my head to see where Robert Jr. was looking, and my light fell on his back several meters away as he moved down the left path in the fork. "Wait!" I squeaked, rushing after him. I stumbled over tree roots and ran haltingly, skidding awkwardly to step around more than one fat, lumbering tarantula as I made my way back to Robert Jr.'s elbow. Our headlamps bobbed in the darkness, and my gaze was drawn farther up where the lamp's beams lit up vast labyrinthian webs high overhead, where nothing on the ground could destroy them. Glinting white gold in our light, they shuddered in an imperceptible breeze. I'm fumbling it, but there's like his descriptions, like a lot of these sentences are really well put together. I gotta say.
Yeah, like well, I was gonna say I wasn't joking. I didn't say it in a joking way. I don't know why anybody would think I would, but I really like the story. I like how it's written so far. Mm-hmm. The only thing I don't like is spiders. So
yeah, that's the problem. Apply that to something we can all enjoy, like sandwiches.
Yeah, the forest of 1,000 salamis. Like, I'll take that.
If you did the same plot, but with like fucking different like cold cuts.
Every cold cut known to man resided in this forest. It was terrifying and delicious.
That'd actually be a pretty awesome horror story. Just getting killed by deli meat. Those webs are way better high up there, I said with a breathless chuckle, trying to shake off the anxiety from the Brazilian wandering spider. We won't walk into any down here. Robert Jr. walked briskly, barely acknowledging me with a grunt. While I looked all around me, casting my headlamp's light to and fro, Robert Jr. hardly moved his head, focused steadily on the twisting path down which he led us. Occasionally he would stop so abruptly that I would collide with his back, and he would gaze up into the ever-thickening treetops at the spiderwebs overhead, which were now so large and thick that massive sections of leaves had suffocated and died. I could see clusters of spiders creeping every which way in the stuff, while more obscured movement shifted on the other side of the web, so thick that I couldn't see what it was. My depth perception was off in this environment, what with the distance between myself and the webs and the number of different sizes of spiders I could see. Everything looked bigger up there from where I was standing. "Communal webs," said Robert Jr., pointing at the massive net of silk. "Most spiders live alone, but some are social. Bunch of different spiders taking care of the same babies, sharing the same food." "They must catch a lot of prey," I said, moving my headlamp over the vast web. "It's huge." "Wouldn't be surprised if they make a regular meal of birds," Robert Jr. speculated. "Squirrels, too. Maybe, if any wander in this far." I looked at him, bathing his stubble-shadowed face in yellow light, and said slowly, That's kind of big for a spider, isn't it?" P. blondi in South America has been known to eat birds. It's the biggest spider in the world, at least outside of this god-forsaken forest. This place ain't like the rest of the world. He paused, a muscle jumping in his jaw, and then said, "But they don't make webs. They live in burrows, so watch your step." I resisted the urge to clamp onto his arm like a child as I swept my headlamp over the edges of our path. Spiders littered the forest floor, scurrying busily, but the irregularly spaced holes along the path and nestled between tree roots were what made me nervous now. The biggest hole looked like it could swallow my leg. We continued to walk, uninterrupted by webs for the most part, but there were a few low-built ones that I would walk into when I was staring off into the woods. And Robert Jr. wouldn't tell me to duck. Well, Robert Jr. is a terrible guide in this. It's like, It's like, yeah, come along, and then it just like has all the webs and shit hit you.
Well, I think he's using this kid for bait. He's like, I want to see where the spiders carry this kid off to. Maybe my daughter's there.
That would actually make a lot more sense than just being like, yeah, I'm scared too. Come on. We'll go together. We'll go to hell together. Unnerved as I was starting to get used to the sensation, hardly jerking back when the sticky, feather-light string snuck up on me. My pulse would still spike when it happened, though, pounding loudly in my ears as I carefully brushed the webs from my face. But then Robert Jr. took us down a second fork in the path when I distractedly collided with two webs of surprising density in a row. I finally focused on Robert Jr. ahead of me to complain about not warning me, and a tangle of silk lit up in my headlamp centimeters away just in time for my face to crash through it. Even though it was my fault for not watching where I was going, I said testily, "Come on, Mr. Lockhart, at least give me a heads up." As I dragged my gloved hands down my face, raking the web from my skin, Robert Jr. said nothing. I looked up over his shoulders in front of me and saw why. The trail ahead was entirely choked in web, a glistening haze like morning fog stretching farther ahead. Shapes twitched within it, different from the shifting masses of hundreds of smaller spiders in the first communal webs we saw. These were heavy and singular, with sharp angles plucking at individual lines of silk. I couldn't quite make sense of what I was seeing. Something crunched under my boot. I looked down at the wispy, stringy gray floor. Brittle old bones of some animal I couldn't identify lay there. Among the bones lay the aged, empty remains of a huge tarantula, skeleton and exoskeleton locked together in death. Had they fought and died and tangled with one another?
I hope so. Whatever it killed, like, drug it to hell with them.
Yeah, please. Jesus, I said loudly, just as Robert Jr. breathed softly. Jesus. He wasn't looking down. He was looking directly up. I looked up, too, and froze. Our headlamps joined and lit up the webs that swallowed the understory, washing over the enormous spiders that moved within them. Things the size of fish bowls, with fat, round abdomens and twitching, creeping legs, thick as pool cues. Clusters of eyes reflected back at us, and the movement of their heavy bodies made meaty, organic clicking noises. These things weren't what Robert Jr. had commented on. The creature slowly descending from the web by a thread was. At first I thought it was a spider with a squirrel or a rat or something in its jaws, but a small, logical corner of my mind reminded me that that's not how spiders eat. Not even tarantulas, who don't wrap their prey in silk. The rodent appeared bisected, as I couldn't see its back legs, with ugly gray skin visible around its midsection like it had mange. Its back half was impossibly the swollen bulb of a spider. It looked like some gruesome mockery of a centaur, the limp torso of some parasitic rodent bursting forth from an unwitting host. There was no way that thing could be real. Or if it was, it couldn't be alive. But the thing's spinnerets kept pumping a hardy silk line, two spindly back legs touching at delicate tips as it worked its way down. And the rodent's head twitched, its furry front legs extending, paws grasping. I saw its face, a squirrel with too many beady black eyes extending up the front of its head, blinking gummily down at us. I could see its long yellow teeth as its mouth lolled open. I was distantly aware of my body moving, weakly grasping Robert Jr.'s jacket sleeve and yanking on it. His voice sounded very far away as he muttered, "What the fuck?" Movement in the corner of my eye somehow managed to pull my attention from the abomination above us. My eyes were drawn down to the edge of the trail on which we stood, and for a moment I thought the ground had dipped down an embankment and we were simply elevated on the path. But I soon saw that it was a massive hole in the ground. A burrow. I continued to tug mechanically on Robert Jr.'s arm. What the fuck? A face peered out of the burrow, ghostly pale against the darkness within, and seemed to drift up and out and closer to us. It was a human face, with too many eyes clustered across the bridge of its nose. Glittering black and blinking slowly, it ducked its head, long dark hair hanging in lank tangles, as a woman's bare moon-white torso emerged slowly from the hole in the ground. Hey, it is Dark Souls.
Yeah.
A hulking...
Don't worry. Out of, like, what was it, 4, I think 3 or 4 of them that you could come across in Dark Souls, only one of them was aggressive. The others were like your friends, so he's got a 75% chance that this will end okay.
Yeah. Do a summon. You'll beat her. A hulking, hairy mass of a spider's abdomen the size of a Volkswagen Beetle followed, connected at her waist. Her 8 branch-thick legs crunched in the leaf litter, audibly thumping with the weight. Robert Jr. and I staggered backwards, upsetting more spiderwebs in the underbrush. The creature's legs were striped with white at their joints, and I thought of Lady Legs back at Robert Jr.'s house and what he said about her species size in the wild. Ungodly big. Robert Jr.'s thoughts were also back in his daughter's room because as his hand gripped my arm in return, I heard him say, "Lucy?" My eyes flew back to the creature's face, its unnatural addition of eyes surrounding the original's. As it tilted its head, I recognized her too. Her mouth dropped open, lower lip dripping with something too viscous to be saliva, and her rail-thin arms spasmed once before lifting up, sending a painful jolt of electric fear up my spine. Her white, long-fingered hands took hold of the squirrel spider dangling between the two of us and herself. The thing squeaked and convulsed, its legs thrashing horribly, and Lucy brought it to her mouth. I ran. I thrashed my way blindly through web after web, back the way we came.
That seems like a bad idea. You're not supposed to thrash.
No, it's all good. I heard Robert Jr. call my name unexpectedly close behind me, and suddenly felt him crash into my back. I hit the ground hard, face first. I barely had time to register. Yeah, right. Oh, it's fuck this. I would kill him. Yeah. I barely had time to register the bright starburst of pain as my nose broke and began to bleed, or the scattering of spiders millimeters in front of my eyes before Robert Jr. yanked me bodily back upright and whirled me around. I thought he was slapping me, but realized he was wiping away spiders that I'd pick up as passengers from the ground. "Don't you run off in here, boy," Robert Jr. hissed in my face, shaking me hard. "Something else will kill you before." The enormous creature loomed behind him, creeping down the trail after us. I started to yell, but Robert Jr. clapped his hand over my mouth, spinning to face her. He forced us into a half-crouch, his body weighing me down to keep me from running again, and I stared with bulging eyes, struggling to breathe through my bleeding nose as Lucy bore down upon us.
"Boy, you gonna marry this girl."
"Boy, this is your wife, goddamn." "It's okay," Robert Jr. said, but he wasn't talking to me. I could feel him shaking against my back. "It's okay, Lucy. You're okay." She came closer, the precise movements of her vast spider body in stark contrast against the limp, feeble movements of her human torso. Her face seemed alert, even with the 6 blurry eyes that looked infected in their unnaturalness. But her arms hung listlessly at her side, her posture hunched. Venom, blood, saliva flowed slowly down her chin. All that remained of the squirrel spider. I could hear her breathing, see her pale throat throb as she swallowed. "That's a good girl, baby," said Robert Jr., his voice low and soothing despite his violent trembling. "Daddy didn't know you lived here, Lucy. We didn't know we'd see you here. You did such a good job here all by yourself, didn't you, baby? Daddy's proud of you." He was slowly inching us back as he spoke nonsense to the thing in front of us. The spider shifted minutely, almost moving after us, but not quite. Lucy's dark, wet mouth drooped open. In a voice that sounded like wind in dead leaves, she hissed, "Daddy." Robert Jr. laughed.
I'm grabbing the deadliest, most venomous spider I could find and just letting it bite me right now just to end it quick.
Yeah, this is all terrible. Why didn't we torch it? Torch it and then go in. Robert Jr. laughed, wild and terrified in my ear, pulling me back another step, the palm of his hand still crushing my lips against my chattering teeth. "That's right, baby. Daddy's here. Daddy didn't think he'd see you all grown up in these woods, huh, baby? Good girl, Lucy." She didn't move after us as we backed away, although her eyes followed us with laser focus, again her voice hoarse and vacant. "Lucy." "That's right, baby. Daddy's going to take your friend back home, okay? You remember Aaron?" Just see, this is you're fucking.
Yeah, don't bring me into this.
Yeah.
Fuck it. Like,
I groaned behind his hand, sick with fear as all 8 of Lucy's eyes shifted onto me. She didn't say my name. Wildly in the back of my head, I wondered if she recognized any of the things Robert Jr. was saying to her, certain that she was all spider like this. That the 2 words she'd said were empty repetitions preceding her final attack, but still she stood motionless, watching our retreat. Daddy's gonna take Aaron home. Is that okay, baby? Robert Jr. said. Will you let me do that, Lucy? She was silent for a long moment, then, okay. Which is a really funny thing for a monster to be like, all right, fair enough. Good girl, Lucy. We're going away. Good girl. Another long stretch of silence as we moved steadily away from her. She still didn't follow, merely watching us. Her voice, unprompted this time, shook me to my core when it next creaked through the night.
See you tomorrow.
Oh, yeah, basically. Come, see me. The noise Robert Jr. made was something of a strangled sob and a laugh. Yeah, baby, I'll come see you. I'll come see you again. Just let me take Aaron home and Daddy will come see you again, baby girl. You keep saying okay. Okay. Bring Quiznos. We were several meters away from her by now. I was sure we were nearing the bend and the fork in the trail we had taken. Slowly, Robert Jr. lowered his hand from my mouth, and I gulped a deep, shaking breath. I can't get us out of here backwards, he said, but I need you watching behind us. You hang on to me, and I will walk you out. You tell me if she follows. Can you do that, son? Wide-eyed and unable to look away from... Can you continue to look at this horrible fucking thing? Like, yeah, I don't think I'll have a problem. Wide-eyed and unable to look away from Lucy's figure down the trail, I nodded. Yes, sir. Okay, careful now. His hand encircled my wrist tightly, and with a firm tug, he took us around the bend. I struggled to walk in reverse, my legs like rubber and my pulse roaring in my ears. Lucy didn't follow us once I lost sight of her. Robert Jr. navigated us back through the forest, avoiding all the webs this time around. I don't know how long it took to get out of the woods. For all I know, it took days. But eventually we broke through the tree line, and the unobstructed moonlight was blinding. I felt separate from my own body as I brushed harmless jumping spiders and orb weavers from my jacket and hat.
No such thing.
Nope. Distantly, I heard Robert Jr. chuckling weakly. I turned around to look at Lockhart Wood, almost casually. I leaned over and threw up on the grass. A few yards away, Robert Jr. did just the same, coughing and laughing harder when he was done. Fuck, he gasped, hands on his face. I watched him stagger and fall heavily onto his ass, giggling manically. Dazed, I went over to him and sat beside him on the grass, staring at the forest. I spat remnants of bile on the ground between my knees. I fumbled with my headlamp, turned it off, and threw my hat aside. I peered at Robert Jr.'s tear-streaked laughing face, vaguely concerned. I can't tell if that's good laughter or bad laughter.
Why would the fuck would it be good laughter? Well, I guess he could be like, my daughter, she's Spider-Man.
The only thing I've ever loved more than my daughter is spiders, and now they're complete.
Yeah.
Christ, he gasped, possibly hyperventilating. You and me both. Fuck. He pressed 2 fingers to his neck, checking his own pulse. What are you going to do now? I asked weakly. Shit, Scooter, I don't know. Probably visit my daughter every now and then? Damn. He scrubbed his hands over his face, groaning deeply. My head swam. I flopped backwards, staring at the night sky. The stars looked like little white spiderlings. I thought suddenly of my mother back at the house, and for whatever reason, all I could think to say was, Hey, so I was thinking, you should give my mom a call sometime. She's not seeing anyone. This kid is fucked up.
Hook your mom up with this guy that just got, like, his brain
Are you
fried.
fucking kidding me? Oh, my God. I don't remember getting home that night. I don't remember getting settled on campus the next day, but I think I'm going to change my major to biology.
No.
I'd like to see Lucy again, and I think maybe a study in arachnology might be a good place to start.
No. That what the fuck? You go that opposite direction. Like, well, I guess if you want to kill every spider on the face of the planet,
I don't need to know how they work to know how to kill them.
Yeah, that's true.
Fire would have done it. I'm sure of it. If not, a really big sword. That's what worked in From Software games, and that's the truest thing to life when dealing with a giant threat. I think what's disturbing about that is how those characters treat that like a happy ending.
Yeah.
Like, that's a fucking horrible thing to happen to her. You would be still right to burn those woods.
That is an interesting... I don't know if that's at the end or if you got more to go
that's
there. That's it. Yeah. I mean, it's a even worse spin on the whole, like, the zombie thing. Walking Dead did it a lot, like, where if the person you loved the most in the entire world got turned into a zombie, could you kill them? And it would be difficult. But yeah, they're not the person anymore. They're the shell of them. It's just their body. And that's what... But the difference here is they gave it the ability to still speak, so you're actually aware that there's still...
There's still the girl in there. Yeah.
Yeah.
You gotta, like, there was one of those spider things in Dark Souls that was like, the spider part was dead. And, like, the woman was still alive.
Yeah.
We gotta get
So maybe
there.
that's the answer. Kill the body, right?
Yeah. If they're cool with that, yeah. Like, I would be the worst, like, if we lived in, like, a sci-fi world, I would be the worst diplomat to send into space. Because just anything weird, I'd be like, fucking kill it.
Yeah, that
but if you watch a lot of sci-fi shit,
not...
that's usually the right answer in the end.
Too many legs on this alien, let's kill it. Too much like
it's always the fuckers who want to, like, study shit, and, like, that gets everybody into trouble. That's how Alien happened. So yeah, that sucked. That was, like, I wasn't kidding. Like, it wasn't, just like, oh, Ben's afraid of spiders. Like, that's really fucking tough to read about. It actually got easier when it became not real spiders.
Yeah, because, then it's a kind of
the scariest monster in this was the Australian fucking thing, or whatever.
Brazilian
that's just
wandering
or the
spider,
Brazilian, yeah. And he's just, like, in the path, ready to fucking go. Like,
I've come across spiders like that before. Like, not that big and, like, certainly not, like, deadly or anything, but... there's a few species of spiders that, like, want to fight you. Like, I've had them come up to my computer desk, like, to the edge, and start doing that thing where they, like, raise and lower their body, like they're...
Yeah, they're fucking insane. Because we're looking at them and, like, holy shit, that's a big bastard. They look at us and it's like, we're gigantic. What the fuck are you doing? Like, you know how scary it is if something that's, like, a fucking 1/800th your size wants to duke it out?
Yeah, because then you at least have the thought in the back of your head, like, this thing can probably beat me, otherwise it wouldn't... Like, what does it know that I don't?
You go to squish a spider, it just, like, grabs your wrist, like, fucking judo flips you.
Yeah, like Roadhouse or something.
Yeah, that's what I'm afraid of. More than getting bit is, like, getting my ass kicked and getting embarrassed. So yeah, that was by a user named Lovzinski. It'll be linked in the description as always. God damn it. So
yeah,
I need to, like, fucking lie down after that. But then I would be easy to get. So I gotta find a way to not get got by spiders here. What would be the best way?
Apparently, stop buying bananas, because I just came across, like, 8 different stories about that Brazilian wandering spider being in...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But when you work at a grocery store, you get fucked with a lot about what spiders you can find in banana boxes.
I feel that way about... Because there's always stories about, like, not just bananas, but, like, just produce in general. Like, every now and then there's just this giant venomous spider that hitches a ride in them. It's like, I'm eating McDonald's from here on out. That's it.
That's what I'm saying. You gotta That's why I eat fast food. It's not because I'm a slob. It's because I respect nature and what it can do. So I only eat the most human processed bullshit. But that was fun. That was kind of a two-part little epic. Like I said, it was a really well-written story. I just the subject matter made it really fucking tough.
I even appreciate it didn't really have the, even though like I think the very first thing I said was, oh, she's going to be half spider. So I mean, it wasn't like a unsurprising twist, but it was done well. And I really liked the inclusion of the fact that like she recognizes her dad, or at least seems to. At the very least, like you said, she can parrot back words, so that makes it feel like, well, there's...
No, she was cool with it. She responded. She's like, oh, sure, whatever. I mean, you just got here. It's kind of rude to just leave right away, but fine. You know. Yeah, I mean, I was surprised it went fantastical. Like I said, it got less scary once it, you know, became a, you know, sort of fantasy there. But, well, I mean, it all is a fantasy. There's no woods with every fucking spider, I hope.
But wouldn't it be convenient if every spider in the world was restricted to one set of woods? Like they weren't anywhere else. They were only in.
If they like signed a treaty, saying like, hey, as the president of all spiders, you know, we won't leave these woods. You better believe I would assassinate the president of all spiders, and I would bomb the fuck out of them still. Like, you know,
I don't trust you to hold up your end of the bargain.
I would make them sign it. I'd make them all move. I would kill the president, and then I would wipe out that forest. Absolutely, I'm gonna give them a forest. What's next? Let them have nuclear arms? Fuck that.
8 of them. Yeah.
8 nuclear arms. Oh, that would be a good trashy novel title. But yeah, that was fun. I was also, you know, like I said, you did your part to make this a rough week. So,
well, yeah, you're dealing with my tweets. I was dealing with actual fucking spiders.
Good, you had it coming. You fucking you monster. Yeah. So. Well, thanks for listening. And we'll do another thing. Less spiders, hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully. Yeah, I might need to like start researching nothing but spider stories.
You better not.
That's too much work to find like
good spider story.
Yeah, over and over. I could probably do it for a week or two, and then you start to have to really work for the information and.
Maybe that's the trick, though. Maybe that's how I get over this. Is like we got to just do a solid year of spider stories, and then I'd like it, and then I'm not fazed by it.
I'm just gonna start sending you packages. I don't have your new address though, unfortunately. Just packages with like air holes poked in it. Like
I'll fucking kill you. Are you kidding me? Don't fucking. Oh, I would hate that.
My luck, I'd do it as a joke. It'd be an empty box with air holes, but like at some point in shipping, a spider would crawl into it.
Right. You would be like, oh, something did kill Ben, and then you would be... That would be a fucking at least a manslaughter charge.
I would need it to kill you, because if it didn't, I would just imagine you going like John Wick, like just unstoppable, like, that's it, I'm fucking killing Steve.
You see, I thought like John Wick had like an almost perfect motivator for like what kickstarts that whole movie, but this is better. A John Wick movie where somebody fucks with him with a spider is
mails
just
him a spider, and he's like, "That's not funny. I'm killing you all."
That's not funny. Yeah,
man, I'm getting so much like.
Yeah, I'm thinking I got a phobia. People keep saying, "Are you scared of spiders?" And I haven't really had an answer. But yeah, I think they suck.
Yeah, we might not be back next week. I might be busy working on my screenplay.
Hey, they keep making John Wick movies. Let us write one. Fuck it.
Yeah. I
would watch John Wick takes out the fucking spider forest. It'd be awesome.
Yeah, he's not even fighting humans. They're just... But we stick to,
but he's still doing the same shit. Like, he's still doing, like, triangle chokes and
I'm
shooting him in the head.
Grabbing a spider and killing it with a pencil or whatever. Like, I forget exactly how he pulled off the pencil kill in the first... I've still only seen the first one. I need to watch the other two.
I watched him kill my spider daughter with a fucking pencil. I mean, 3 was the weakest, but I still think they're, fantastic movies. And they're just kind of now in that rut with them where they keep making, like, cliffhanger endings because they know they can just keep making them.
Yeah.
And, like, the first one is, like, perfect because it's, like, it doesn't assume it's getting another one,
Right.
So it's a good, like, start and end.
I just wish they would have written John Wick into the Bill and Ted timeline. Like, that should be the same universe.
You know how fucked up it is to try to watch Bill and Ted after he's done that?
Well, I haven't seen the new Bill and Ted yet, and I imagine that'll be weird because he looks like John Wick because he's older now. I watched Bill and Ted.
He's shaved. So it's like, he is John Wick, but he, like, shaved for Bill and Ted, this new one. And I'm just, like, having him go, like, whoa. And it's like, and it's like, you don't do that anymore. Like, you would have killed everyone. Like, this is all setting up for John Wick to get into a gunfight with Death, who they were friends with.
Yeah. But anyway,
yeah, we're at an hour, so we're gonna go. Bye.
Goodbye.